Good morning and welcome. We are so glad you're joining us today. I'm going to give it a few minutes while people join the Zoom room. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes while we wait for people to join us. Great. I think we'll get going. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on our middle school approach to teaching and learning at King School today. And with me are colleagues from the middle school who are going to answer a lot of your questions and tell you about our program. Today, we are focused on the middle school. So if you have questions about other divisions, I would be happy to reach out to you later to answer those questions. We could schedule a phone call, or you could certainly reach out to me by email. But we really do want to try to focus on the way in which King approaches teaching our students and how our students learn today. It is a unique experience founded in a real emphasis on getting to know the student as a person and as a learner. So that'll be a lot of the focus on our conversation today. I'm going to turn it over to our head of middle school, Dr. Josh Deitch, who's going to introduce himself, and then we'll let our teachers introduce themselves as well.
Hi, thanks, Nina. Like Nina said, my name is Josh Deitch. I am the head of the middle school here at King. I'm really glad that you have taken the time to join us this morning. We spent a lot of time thinking about the best way to work with our unique learners that are the young adolescent of middle school age kids. They are their own unique brand of students who are figuring out who they are, how they fit into the world around them. And when we talk about who they are, it's not just about who they are as people, it's who they are as learners too. And so one of the things we really try to focus on at our school is giving them an opportunity to experience a variety of different skills and styles and reach out and understand the world around them and give them the tools to understand the world around them, evaluate it, analyze the information that's coming to them, understand what it means to them, understand how they can then internalize it, and ultimately help them along on their path from student to scholar, where they're going to be producing and providing and vocalizing and verbalizing their own increasingly complex and sophisticated understanding of what they might be talking about. And that's something that takes time. That's something that takes a lot of work, but it's something that I feel like the colleagues who are here with us right now, as well as the colleagues that I work with on a daily basis, are so well positioned to do, because at the forefront of everything we do, we truly, truly understand and love the middle school age group. And well, that can be kind of unique, because sometimes that is the time in our lives, if you remember your own time in middle school, or that might be the time where you're a little, we're the most unlovable. And so we're really, really excited to be able to talk about our approach to teaching and learning in this division and in this time in life, which really leads with us understanding the kids and helping to develop their understanding of how to recognize that their voice and their understanding of the world has value and meaning, and how to hone and use that voice effectively. So that's my 2 cents. I'm really excited to hear that we're all here so that you can hear from my wonderfully talented and thoughtful and connected and caring colleagues.
Stephanie, do you want to kick off the teachers?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Hoos. I am the 8th grade English teacher, as you can tell by my cozy scarf and very distinguished glasses. I am also the middle school coordinator for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and manners of making sure that our curriculum and our professional growth and development really follow the mission statement of King, as well as hold every student in a light of compassion, kindness, and being known by us. So I'm really happy to be here, and let me know if you have any questions about our English program or the 8th grade program.
Lindsay?
Good morning. I'm Lindsay Sulberizen. I'm the 6th grade science teacher, as well as the middle school science coordinator. And with that, my main role is to make sure that the sequencing between science skills from each division is pretty smooth, but also reflects their growth and understanding from lower to middle to upper.
Thanks. And Anna.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Lubowitz. I teach 7th grade English at King. So I work closely with Stephanie and members of the 7th grade team. And I'm really happy that you're here to learn more about the middle school division.
Great. So I would love to dig into some Q&A. I know that those of you on this call are probably at a variety of stages in the application process. Some of you have probably had it completed since early December, and some of you may be just dipping your toe into the water right now. So please go ahead and use the Q&A feature down at the bottom of the screen, and then I will direct those questions to our colleagues. And at the end of this session, I will spend a little bit of time talking about the application process from here on out. So rest assured that information is coming, but I want to make the most of our time with our teachers as they have a short window of time in between their classes. To kick us off, Dr. Deutsch and I asked this group of teachers to join us today because we know that some of you have had really successful interdisciplinary work. And I think that's something that something that King does really well. And I was wondering if a couple of you could just comment on some of the projects or ways in which you've communicated with other teachers in other disciplines to help our students really experience the topic that they're studying in a different way than if they were only looking at it through the English lens or the science lens. Who wants to start with that?
I will happily speak to
Great,
that.
thank you.
So the 8th graders this year have been doing their English and history coursework through a humanities lens. We just finished a project in the 8th grade called What Does Activism Look Like? And in the spirit of understanding activism of the past and activism of the present and a prediction of what activism might look like in the future, Ken Lewis, who is my partner in these humanities projects as the 8th grade history teacher, and I designed coursework that would help the students analyze the Black Panther Party, European movements with art and music, and also the American movements that have taken place in the 1960s and 70s in order to promote equity and inclusion in our culture. And then to fast forward to the current Black Lives Matter movement and Me Too movements in order to compare and contrast those experiences. The students then had to create a short film that would depict the past and the present coming together. Several students used this as an opportunity to exercise their creativity. We had everything from zombie apocalypse films about past activists coming back to life and giving advice to present activists, to time travel, to activists meeting each other in a cafe and having a conversation about how best to approach peaceful activism. And then students also utilize technology. We had animation, virtual reality, and all sorts of different research-based information that was communicated through a creative lens. The students wrote their own scripts using the help of Amy Darden in our drama department. They composed their own soundtrack using Garrett Mendez's support in our music department. And they also worked with Katie Tobin, our art teacher, to create protest posters that would reflect the artwork of the 1960s and 70s, as well as today's activism posters that they would feature in their films. So it was a real collaboration effort, not just interdisciplinary, but also interdepartmental across the entire campus. We then are going to show the top 4 films and give out Critics' Choice Awards that were voted on by the full faculty that were involved in each aspect of the project. And the students will then receive their awards at our 8th grade class meeting. So we'll have the chance to watch the final 4 films that were created and praise the students for all of the hard work that they've done. And as a community, really celebrate that the students are doing something so interdisciplinary and creative, but also it's a real asset to their learning experience to see the past and the future come together, not just through the lens of English and history, but through the lens of activism.
What a great example. Thank you, Stephanie. Lindsay, there's a question here about how the middle school helps new students acclimate. It says specifically for 8th grade, but I think it could be 7th or 8th grade, maybe even a little bit of 6th grade. Since you have been here the longest, I thought you might be a good person to answer that question.
Yeah, of course. Well, first off, I do have to say that I think King, and one of my favorite qualities just of our school, is how kind the community is and how welcoming. And really what that looks like to me is this just open approach to bond and to connect right from the start. So I am also an advisor, and typically I could have half of my advisory who is new to King just because about a third of the class is new in 6th grade. So it might differ number-wise between the middle school, but for me, the approach is making sure right from the start that we are connected, whether that is team building exercises during advisory, get to know you activities, making sure that certain pairs and partners have common interests and things that they're maybe outside of school connected through. But it's just this, it's kind of this oversight from the advisory perspective to make sure that the kids feel included and welcome and that they have somebody, both adult and a student, a peer that they can connect with. And behind the scenes, that's also a lot of the team collaboration. So we're constantly connecting with our team members and reflecting on the new students. How are they feeling? Feedback. Is there something we can do to maybe connect again? Is it just a day during class meeting where we do some kind of fun activity or game? Is the advisory period certain points in the beginning of the year geared towards welcoming activities, things like that? So it's a collective effort, both with our administration as well as within our team. But again, it's really such a kind community, and the students are truly wonderful. So
Great.
it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure having all the new kids.
And I also just,
Thanks.
I'm just going to add one other thing, which is that we started this past summer, especially knowing that this year was a unique year where students might be disconnected a little bit more than usual. But it's a program that we're going to continue all the way through. So we have been utilizing basically what we're considering an ambassador program, and our Ben Magidson, our Dean of Student Life, established this program so that every summer when students are preparing to come into the school, we will identify current students and families to reach out to those families and start to build a relationship with those kids before they come into the school year. It was incredibly successful this past year, where a number of our students, as opposed to that first day coming in where like the faces, I don't know who these faces are, I'm not sure where to go, they had people that they were just connected to right away, and those relationships have grown and blossomed, and it's been a really wonderful addition to the wonderful things that Lindsay was already talking about our students transitioning into the school.
Great, thanks. Josh, while we have you, there are a few questions about the schedule of the day and after school activities, and maybe you could just give an overview. I think most of them are aimed at sort of a non-COVID time, because we're all hoping that next fall we'll be back to our regular schedule.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we really are thoughtful about in designing a schedule is trying to make sure and balance the fact that we know that, core academic time is very important, but as well as the opportunity for our students to get up, to move, to take brain breaks and move around. So in non-COVID times, what we actually have is we have what's called an 8-day rotating schedule. And that does not mean that we're going to school on Saturdays and Sundays. What it means is that every week looks a little different. Every Monday might not be the exact same schedule. And to be perfectly honest, though that might sound daunting as an adult, our students integrate into that a lot more than I do, right? As an adult, I like Mondays to be Mondays, but our students really get used to it very quickly. And what happens the reason why we call it a rotating schedule is that we also know that our students, as we all are human, right, are going to show up differently at different times of the day. If you're a morning person, then you're ready to rock and roll at 8:10 when our school day officially begins. Although our school day starts at 8. We have a 10-minute advisory period, and then our first period begins at 8:10. And like Lindsay said, there's a lot of stuff that goes into the advisory period. But from 8:10 to then 3:15, we are in school. And what we've really done is that we have what's called a block schedule, so that on Monday or on A-Day, what I have first period will not be what I have second period. What I have second period will not be what I have third period the next day, because we want to give students and teachers the opportunities to experience the class and connect to each other at different times throughout the day, because of exactly what I'm talking about, which is some people are morning people, some people are afternoon people, sometimes people get hangry right before lunch. And these are all things that we really take into account when we start to build the schedule. We also take into the account the idea that our schedule is designed with 2 academic classes in a row, a break, 2 more academic classes in a row, a break for lunch, and then 2 more academic classes in a row, and a break for sports. So every middle schooler ends the day in a non-COVID year with athletics at the end of the day. And they have a wonderful opportunities to take to choose between a number of competitive sports programs. All of our students are expected to play a sport, and they compete. And that's a really wonderful part of our program. It's part of our curriculum. And then after school, we do have a number of opportunities that happen throughout the week and throughout the year. A lot of those are devoted to service learning and community service. So oftentimes on a regular basis, students will pile on a bus and head over to a local community center or a Boys and Girls Club to connect to local organizations that we've developed really wonderful partnerships with. There are some after school experiences. There in the lower school, there's more of an articulated after school program. The upper school tends to be, the middle school tends to be a little bit more free after school. One of the things we really do believe in, I saw this in the questions as well, is helping our students develop a sense of self-advocacy and self-voice. And so on a normal year as well, that after where we stop our school day at 3:15, but our teachers are on campus at least until 4 o'clock. And the reason behind that is we want to help our students understand that we're there for them. And on any given day, at the end of the school day, we'll have a number of students, one, just hanging out because that's where their community is, and two, really waiting to engage with a teacher for extra help, for extra extension, just to clarify a question. I know walking by classrooms last year at 3:25, Lindsay's science lab was always populated, not just by her own students, but by her previous students, because this is where they felt connected and wanted to share kind of what happened in their day. And those are really wonderful experiences and wonderful opportunities where we really see ourselves as a community of learners and a group of people who are supportive of one another. And the teachers kind of roll with that as well.
Thanks, Josh. Anna, I think this is a good question for you. How do you manage equitable participation in the classroom since students have varying levels of comfort presenting or sharing?
I'm so glad to hear this question because this is something I think we're really passionate about at King. It kind of feeds into all these other things we've been talking about, right? This getting to know our students, allowing them to have some agency and some choice in the classroom. So I think from the get-go, the first thing we do is really get to know our students, who's comfortable, who's not comfortable, and help them to advocate when they're uncomfortable in a situation. We talk a lot about these ideas of what it means to be uncomfortable and to not necessarily have a voice in a situation, and what do you do in that moment, and how do you find your voice, right? How do we amplify the voices of others? So the first step, I think, is helping students to advocate for themselves when they're uncomfortable and getting to know our students. The second step, I think, is allowing students multimodal opportunities to share their voice, right? We do a lot of verbal discussions in English class. That's a given. You see that everywhere. But we also do a lot of digital discussions, discussions online, even before COVID times. We're using Padlet. We use Jamboard. We use Parlay, a lot of different platforms to allow students to articulate their voice in writing and in a safe space where everyone is sort of on the same playing field. The same thing is true in non-COVID times, especially of written discussions on paper. So if you come into my classroom, you'll often see big pieces of butcher's paper on desks, kids huddled around, writing conversations, drawing pictures to share what they think or to demonstrate their ideas and their thought processes. So these more visual ways of discussing are ways that we allow for equity. And then I think another way we provide equity is allowing students to have some choice in the way they share their ideas, right? Maybe, for example, sort of in conjunction with what Stephanie was just saying, I just did a project where students had a choice to either do a dramatic reading of a verse piece that they wrote, or to create a soundtrack, so to share their work through music. So we give them opportunities, even if it's just choosing a different prompt, right? There are choices of 4 prompts and you choose one, giving them opportunities to choose what they want to respond to and how they respond are different ways to provide equity and discussion.
Thank you. Stephanie, this is a question about what are some of the books that students are reading in grade 8 and the main focus of that class? And also, do you ever have authors come to talk to the students? Oh, and also, is creative writing part of the curriculum? I can remind you all those pieces.
I love a multi-layered question. Stacking questions is important. So I'll start at the end and work my way back. So in terms of our English class and our core curricular questions, the answer to your question is we kind of do it all. I actually choose new books throughout the year, every year. I think that the curriculum needs to be a living thing. I don't believe in a canonical structure to the school year. I believe that the canon is a living and breathing thing that needs to include authors of multiple different perspectives and multiple different identities. So it's really significant to me also as the middle school coordinator for diversity, equity, and inclusion that multiple modalities and multiple voices are represented in our texts. We always end our year with Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. And I think that that pays homage and respect to what most parents and what most people think of when they think of a core curricular component of an English classroom. But at the beginning of the year, I make a point to choose short story texts that represent many different voices, races, sexual orientations, gender identities, and of course, ethnic backgrounds and national backgrounds, so that the students can not just see themselves in the text, but have a view into other people's lives and other people's perspectives. I then like to choose a graphic novel. And the reason behind that is I want students who are not typically English people, as they would self-reference, to actually see that the English curriculum is accessible through multiple formats and multiple genres. I also collaborate very deeply with Brady Shoemaker, our film teacher, to talk about how visual art and visual communication can actually be found in the literary experience. And then I do a Q3 unit called Where Am I in This Story, in which I select 6 to 10 books of multiple voices, multiple perspectives, and I ask the students where they see themselves in each of those texts, so that they can explore what it means to not just see an experience of a middle school student on the page, but a middle school student who might be experiencing the world through a different lens than their own. So for example, right now we're reading Monster by Walter Dean Myers, we're reading The Night Diary, we're reading Lillian Duncan, we're reading, God, this is so high pressure. We're also reading other texts that have to do with the immigrant experience, Lucky Broken Girls, about the Cuban American immigrant experience. So all of these texts have an access point, and that all of the protagonists are indeed middle school aged or just slightly above, but they're all coming from different walks of life and different perspectives and experience. So I wish I could tell you these are the 5 books that we read in 8th grade at King, but we don't do that. And I don't believe in that. And I think that also every middle schooler that I've come in contact with is very excited to come back to the middle school and ask me, so what are the kids reading this year? What are you teaching this year? Because they know that I don't believe in a stagnant curriculum. I believe that the curriculum needs to be just as living and breathing as the middle schoolers that I teach.
I think I would have been an English major if you had been my teacher, Stephanie.
Everyone's an English major at heart, Nina. That's how I feel, genuinely.
Just a quick follow-up question. Do we teach rules of grammar, syntax, and handwriting also?
I don't teach handwriting, sadly. I wish that I did. That might be something to think about for future non-COVID, non-digital times. But I do teach grammar and syntax. I want to be very blunt and clear. Our explicit instruction, and perhaps Anna can speak to this, our explicit instruction is really quite foundational in our 6th and 7th grade year. Once a student reaches 8th grade, we use what's called implicit instruction, meaning I utilize the writing process and in-process writing in order to teach things like sentence structure, complexity of sentence structure, vocabulary usage, generated creative thought. And I'm sorry I missed the creative writing question earlier, but we do utilize things like verse and figurative language in order to implicitly get students to utilize those things in their text. Right now, I'm doing a unit where students are being asked to write about their choice books for Q3, and I'm going to be doing an implicit instructional component on idiomatic language and cliche, so that students actually eliminate that from their expressive writing. But I'm not going to stand in front of the room for 45 minutes and lecture directly on what idiomatic language is and how to eliminate that from their writing. I also am doing one-on-one meetings with all 70 kids about their essays throughout the process, so that each student gets that one-on-one attention from me, and so that we don't operate in a workshop model that is lecture-based, but rather a workshop model that is student-based.
Great. Anna, did you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think Stephanie did a really good job of talking about sort of top down and as a 7th grade person, I bridge what happens in 6th grade and what happens in 8th grade, right? That's my job. So 6th grade is definitely very foundational. There's a lot of explicit teaching. 7th grade, there's definitely less explicit teaching. There is more than 8th grade. We do explicit grammar lessons, but we start getting them ready for what Stephanie's explaining now, this implicit teaching. And in terms of the creative writing at the 7th grade level, the 8th grade level, and the 6th grade level, really, we focus on all the genres, right? We do some creative writing, but we also do a lot of process-based analytical writing. I would say that as a department is our biggest focus, because that's the part that spans all the disciplines, right? I work with a biology teacher, the history teacher, and these skills are really important across the board. So I'd say that's our main focus, but there's certainly our opportunities for creative writing. I just did a verse writing piece with my students. So yeah, rest assured, all genres are reached.
Thank you. Lindsay, could you talk a little bit about our advisor program?
Sure. Yeah, I did see that question in the chat. So yes, each student has an advisor. The number of advisors differs per grade. So for example, there's 5 advisors in grade 6. There are 6 in grade 7, and then there are 7 in grade 8. It's just based on the student population in that grade. So for example, I have 11 advisees this year, but throughout my now 7 years at King, that number has ranged from 10 to 12. So it just differs again by student population. And really, especially in this year, the focus on advisory, Josh and as well as Ben, who's not on this call, but they did a lot of work leading up to advisory this year to make sure in this COVID year, in this pandemic, that the students felt heard, supported, valued, that they had that connection, because it's different. And when you can't see their faces throughout the day to really just connect with them, or you can't be too close for too long, because again, we want to practice social safe distancing. We increase the amount of time we are in advisory together to still build those and foster those positive relationships. So as Josh mentioned before, it's usually from 8 to 8:10, but the amount of time is staggered just based on when students arrive to school. This year, we're together full solid 30 minutes every morning, and then we have extended advisory periods. So during the morning, we make sure we greet each other. Simple good morning. Maybe there's some kind of share out, like a would you rather question. Maybe there's some kind of activity and game that we play, like building on a story. Just this morning during my remote advisory, played heads or tails, which is flipping a coin, but they signal heads or tails and they take a guess. And then they can turn their screen off on Zoom if they are incorrect and see who the final winner is. But it's really interactive, and it gives each student a voice and a chance to share. And we also, I saw something else in the chat, we also make sure that there are current event-related discussions happening. And we make sure that those are also guided. So again, Josh and Ben do a lot of support for the advisor program to make sure that we have materials and resources. And then based on that, we have the choice if it's going to be a discussion, or if they're going to watch a CNN 10 clip, or if they're just going to journal. So if everyone has their own advisory journal, it's a living document that they add to throughout the year, and they can reflect back on it. Some of the work that we do in that journal doc is, we recently just did New Year's resolutions, but we also started talking about next quarter goals now that our semester is coming to an end. So it gives them an opportunity to both verbally participate, but also to just reflect. And then the advisor can look over that work and do follow-up one-on-one conversations. And each one of us has that opportunity to schedule these like little moments where we're just like, what's going on? How's it going? What was really great for you this week? What's something that you feel like I need to know? And if they don't want to share necessarily verbally with us, we give them that opportunity, then they can do that through their journal, and we can just follow up in a written format. But again, it's a way that we get to connect with them, and it's kind of like our own little homeroom bubble. And so advisory is really a special program.
Thank you, Lindsay. Josh, I think this question might have been written by you. It's certainly a good one for you to answer. What is special about this age, middle school? So many schools make distinctions about this particular period of time in their lives. Why are these years so important, and how do you attend to that?
That's kind of like why we do this.
Why do you get up every morning?
Exactly. I think one of the things that I would say very clearly about the middle school student and the middle school experience, the young adolescent is, and if you hear me speak and if you come to the school, you'll hear me say this probably every time I talk, is our students, our young adolescents go through more change, physical, emotional, cognitive, intellectual, social, during these 3 to 4 years of their lives than any other 3 years of their lives, except for the time when they're born to when they're 3 years old. They're trying to figure out who they are. They're trying to figure out who they fit with. They're trying to figure out what the world around them means. They're starting to learn that they have the capacity to think abstractly and draw conclusions from ideas that are unique and different. They're trying to individuate from the adults in their lives while also recognizing that they really want the approval of the adults in their lives. And so throughout these 3 or 4 years in middle school, they are going to try on, they're going to become who they are. At least to a certain extent. They still have a long road ahead of them. They're going to grow for a long, long time. Everyone's going to go through this at a different pace. But this is the time in their lives where they are growing and learning and developing kind of a strong sense of who they are, who they're going to be as adults, and how does that identity fit into the world around them. And so I really do believe as a middle school, one of the things we lead with is we have to lead with both our heads and our hearts. We have to provide them with a challenging, rigorous, rich academic experience. And we also have to provide them with relationships and connections to adults and to the people in their lives so that they can understand how they learn and how they grow and how they're going to develop into people who have an impact on others. And so one of the things we do in the middle school is we have a really strong focus on the concept of community. One of the things you hear when you come to our school is everyone will talk about how strong our community is. And oftentimes that can fall really hollow for a 12-year-old who looks around and says, yeah, cool, everybody says community is a thing. One of the things we try and do is make it really connected and really directly relevant to their own experience, and recognize that what it really means to be in community is that every single person in that community, their daily actions, their daily interactions develop and create that community. When we say we have a strong community, it's because we care and connect and recognize that our actions have repercussions and impact on others. And when we hold ourselves to those values and we hold ourselves to recognizing that we need to be able to understand our impact on others, that's when we start to build a really strong community. The example I always give is right now, even though if we were all in the same room, I could turn off the light. One person, I could turn off the light and we could all be in the dark. And that has an impact. And then the next thing I do is turn the light back on and everyone would be back in the light again. We have the ability to affect and be powerful and impact other people. And therefore we have to understand that that power has responsibility, if I'm going to kind of paraphrase Spider-Man. And I think one of the things that we go through is, as a school and in our program, is that we really develop and hire and focus on teachers who understand and care about and care about the kids and teach kids first and their discipline second. Every single teacher on this call right now is an expert in their content area, but more importantly, they're an expert on middle school kids and how to deliver their content area to middle school kids. When Lindsay's talking about, phase change and matter, she's not talking about she's going to talk about the ins and outs and how that works, but she also knows all the ins and outs about the ways a 10 and 11-year-old is going to maybe misunderstand it, misconstrue it, miscommunicate it. And so she's already prepared for that stuff. And she's built over the course of the year a really wonderful connection to the kids who are going to kind of go with her even when they're like, I don't really care why a solid turns to a gas. And I think those type of things are really, really important. The last thing I'll add is you've heard our teachers talk a lot about the ideas of voice and choice. Those are two words that have popped up a lot. There's a lot of research out there that says between starting around grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, and then really in the middle school years, students start to disengage from school. They feel like they lose a lack of curiosity. They start to lose the development of creativity. And so we have to develop an opportunity and a program that really engages them and connects them to their school experience. And one of the primary ways you do that is you elevate the individual, you elevate their development of character, and you find relevancy and connection. And one of the primary ways to do that is help them understand that they matter, they're valuable, and that they have a choice in terms of how they show what they know.
Great, thank you. The next question I'm going to ask each of the teachers to answer. It is, what are the key qualities or traits of children to lead them to thrive in the middle school at King? So if you could each just give a couple of character traits that you feel like are really important for them to be successful at King, that would be great. Anna, do you want to start?
Sure. I think the first one that comes to my mind is they're curious. The middle school students are really curious. They have a lot of questions. Sometimes we know the answers, sometimes we don't, and we find the answers together. But I think fostering that curiosity is really important, as you heard Josh just allude to as well. And I think compassion is a big thing at King too, especially this year. We spent a lot of time talking about how do we connect with others? How do we care for others in our community at King, but also in the wider community of Stamford, Fairfield County, the world in general, right? So compassion, I think, is a big one too.
Lindsay?
Yeah, sure. Well, I love those that Anna just shared. I was thinking definitely curious, but building off of compassionate, they have a lot of empathy, and that's really important in the classroom, especially when we're looking at current topics happening in the world, but also within our curriculum. For example, in 6th grade science, we're right now in an environmental justice unit. So looking at equitable access to drinkable fresh water, both in our country and abroad, like they immediately reflect their empathy and again, their compassion. But the one that stands out, I think, the most to me is kindness. And I can't say it enough, but they really are kind, curious, compassionate, empathetic. And I'm going to pass the torch to Stephanie.
Well, now I'm just annoyed because everybody stole mine, which is fine. Rude, but fine. I would say that the quality of an 8th grader and a middle schooler in general that I look for is openness and vulnerability. The truth of the matter is that students arrive in 8th grade sort of already in the decision-making process of who they are. And they've already made these decisions. I'm not a math person. I'm not an English person. I'm not a this. And I think that that's really detrimental to the growth of the human mind and the cultivation of the human spirit. And I think it's really important that we as educators help students understand that, yes, they are in process of finding out the people that they are going to be, and that it is our job to keep them open and to keep them vulnerable to the things that maybe they're wrong about who they think they are, and that it's okay to be wrong. It's a little uncomfy and it's a little squishy, and it maybe doesn't make you feel so good to think of who you are and to be challenged. But I'm looking for somebody who is open and vulnerable to being challenged about who they think they are, and open to maybe learning more about themselves through the process of being a student.
Great. And now for those of you watching, you can understand why these teachers love working with King kids. Don't they sound like great kids? Josh, there's a really good, there's a question here that leads complimenting your last answer. So well done. And then following up, do you bring the parent community forward with you on this journey? Many schools have a lecture series, common reading, et cetera, for parents. How could parents get involved at this important time of their children's journey?
Yes, we do that. So one of the things I would say, so there's a couple ways we do that. So one, we have a really active parents association, and they actually just, a common book is a really good example of something that they started this year. There's a King Reads. Everyone is going to be reading the same book and connecting to and talking about the opportunity to share and think about that book that's going through it. We also have a series of parent coffees and community outreaches throughout the year that are devoted to different age groups, different things that happened throughout the school year. We just had a middle school coffee this morning. It was a less than really exciting and engaging experience. We were talking about upcoming standardized testing happening next week. And don't worry, standardized test is more for our own internal use than any external factors or metrics, but it's just a way that we collect information about our students, because we want to know our students from a variety of different perspectives. But we have a monthly meeting with parents and different teachers and different administrators to talk about kind of the ins and outs of what it means to raise these kind of young adolescents and how we can help work through it. I think one of the things we also have is we have advisors who are really well versed in this as well. So one of the things that I would come back to is we have the advisor is also an advocate for your child. They're someone who knows your kid well throughout the building, and there's someone you can go to and say, hey, this seems odd. Can I kind of run something by you? And we are there to kind of help support in that regard. We have regular lecture series, regular speakers come in from outside. We have a parents run kind committee, which is devoted to continuing to grow our own community's understanding and sophistication around aspects of identity from all different age groups. We have various wonderful experts come in and share their thoughts. We have one coming in a few weeks to talk about stress and anxiety and what that means. I mean, I think that's a little pertinent right now in the world around us, and how do we manage that, and how do we work with our kids around that? So, I think one of the things we do is bring as many people along for this as possible. We've also, I think one of the things that's been great about COVID, not a lot of things are great, but we've consistently developed our complexity and sophistication around communication. And so one of the things that we do regularly is, even for folks who can't connect to us live, we have video recordings, we have open sessions, we have things like that allow for us to break down the learning outside of the devoted time that's been scheduled to what's happening at this moment in time. So I think all those things kind of go hand in hand with building community. And then I would also, the last thing I'll say, I know I'm talking a lot, is we are a school that values the individual student experience. We care about the individual student experience, so we can provide these community opportunities and these community conversations. And then some of the more meaty stuff that happens is when you come in and talk to us one-on-one about your particular child. We want to talk to you about that your child and what you see, because one of the things that we do in middle school is we help everyone understand who this child is. We see this child in middle school, we see them during the day, you see them at night, and there's a real reality to the fact that those can be two very different looking people, separated by like a car ride or a bus ride between two buildings.
Great, thank you. The last question I'm going to ask Lindsay and Anna to each answer from the perspective of their respective disciplines. The question is specifically, how would King handle any disparities in accumulated learning for new students due to the impacts of COVID and learning different school backgrounds? But I think it's actually something that we have to deal with every year, because all of our kids enter the school from different schools with a slightly different background, different strengths and weaknesses. And one of the hallmarks of a King education is our ability to challenge kids who are really ready to dig deep and go further, and at the same time support kids as they're struggling with fractions or one area that really is tripping them up. So I think it'd be really great for the parents on the call to just hear, what does that look like in science and English as two examples? How do you balance that, making sure that kids are engaged regardless of whether they need a little bit more challenge or a little bit more support on the given topic? I'll let you guys decide who starts.
I can start, Lindsay, if you want. I I think the first thing that we do in the 7th grade is, it's a little different in 7th grade, I think, than 6th grade, because a lot of students have already been at the school and have some of the foundational knowledge that some of the new students don't have, which is totally fine and expected. So what we do at the beginning of the year always is we have some time to gauge with benchmarks, right? These diagnostic assessments. So seeing where the students are in terms of grammar skills, in terms of writing skills, in terms of reading comprehension. And those diagnostic assessments help us to really form our curriculum for the year. And like Stephanie said, our curriculum is always fluid, right? We don't come each year with set lessons that we're ready to just sort of plug in. It changes all the time. So we do change our instruction based on what students need. And the other part of this is the differentiation piece, right? All of our assessments and all of the activities we do are meant to meet all of our learners' needs. So we in English are not tracked at all by student strength. So we teach students of all different strengths, and each lesson offers an opportunity to differentiate. We allow students to write using graphic organizers, right? Using outlines. We explicitly teach an outline format. We teach students how to write a claim, how to write context, evidence, analysis. And in 6th grade, students learn that too, right? They have that foundational knowledge. New students will get the same instruction. We teach it again to all students and then provide those structures that allow them to succeed. That's also beneficial for students who have been here and need a reminder, and for students who don't, they don't need to use it, right? So I think this differentiation is sort of implicit in what we do and helps all students, but especially these students who are new and don't have some of the foundational knowledge of the skills for the course.
So very similar in science, but definitely in 6th grade, as I said earlier, about a third of the class is typically new. So every year in the beginning of the year, especially me and the rest of my team definitely hone in on getting to know the students. So specific for science, that's kicking off just general skills. Whether or not they have had any experience in the scientific method, following procedures, making hypotheses, identifying variables, I'll do a quick diagnostic, whether it's a survey or a Google form, just to gauge their general understanding. But as Anna said, education, our curriculum is fluid. It's constantly adjusting and developing. Maybe they've learned how to make a hypothesis, but they forgot. There's a lot of change that happens throughout the summer months. And if they did it maybe in 4th grade, but not so much in 5th grade, then it's great to, hit it really hard in 6th grade so that they're confident and can then use that skill throughout the middle school. The other skill I focus a lot on is graphing. Just simply making graphs by hand versus by the time they're in 8th grade, using graphical analysis on their Chromebooks. And so digitally generating their graphs. So no matter what their experience is, they all come in with a graphing diagnostic evaluation, and then we build on that skill together. And that goes for all of the academics in 6th grade. We kind of gauge their initial understanding, whether they're new or returning, and build off it from there. So everyone's exposed to the same, and then we can really see who has a lot more strength or a lot more experience within that skill set, and who might need a little bit more of a push and our support. And then we focus and make sure that we can have maybe office hours or time with that student in the study hall to work on them with it. We also provide really helpful feedback. It might look different in science and for English, but trying to make sure that they have feedback is essential. And the other way to gauge just their understandings, for me in 6th grade, I call it my levels of understanding, and I use that in an exit ticket. So based on the beginning of the year, certain concept skills, again, I try to make sure that I'm checking in with the students in terms of their level of understanding, and then I follow up if they're feeling completely lost and need more support. But yeah, like Anna said, we make sure that they all start off together and then work our way through who needs a little bit more support.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you to all of our panelists. I'm going to stay on for a few minutes and go through some admission application nuts and bolts, but I hope you enjoyed this morning as much as I did. I think it's such an inspiring division as part of our inspiring school, and if you didn't get your question answered, please feel free to reach out and we can put you in touch with some of these folks as well. Thank you, panelists. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. As I mentioned, I'm sure that a lot of you are at different places in the application process. And for those of you who have already submitted your application, our admission committees are starting to read the applications and are really excited to release our decisions on February 12th. If you aren't quite there yet, we are accepting applications on a rolling basis. And basically what that means is that we can't guarantee a decision by February 12th, but we'll certainly do our best. We know that that would be better for you to learn sooner rather than later whether this is the right fit for your child. We have, for middle school, Mark Saracino is the Associate Director of Admission, and he would be happy to sort of walk you through the process and get you caught up if you feel a little bit behind, and discuss with you sort of what the timeline might look like. We do use the standard application online, which is great. It's a common application. So if you're applying to a couple other schools, that will be a convenience for you. And we are working with families to try to get either the ISEE scores or the SSAT scores taken. And again, Mark or I can walk you through that process. On our website, we do have an application timeline process, and it has some links to some resources. So I would recommend you taking a look at that. And again, if you're a little bit late in the process, just understand that you don't need to worry as much about the dates. Just make sure that you check off each requirement and you'll be in good shape. And we will put your application in front of the admission committee as soon as it's completed. My office loves to connect with families, especially this year. We're used to having our building filled with families every day, and it's very quiet and very lonely. And so I really do encourage you to give us a call, because we look at every conversation with a family as an opportunity to get to know you. So if you have a question, big or small, please give us a call or send us an email to set up a time for a call, and we'd be happy to connect and work with your family through the process. Thanks again for joining us today. If you missed some of our other copies, they are recorded and they're on the website, and I would recommend that you take a look at some of the specific areas that we covered. Thank you so much.